Hello. If you're here, there are about 4 things that you need to know. Number one being that the proverbial gauntlet was thrown down about a couple of years ago at this point. My brother and I decided that we had our favorite books. We wanted each other to read each other's favorite books. And if one of us started to read the other's favorite, the other would need to start the other's favorite in turn. I have no idea if this is making sense. It will make sense as it goes along. This is what the video is about. This is going to be a reading vlog of myself reading Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov, which is my brother's favorite book or near favorite. And my brother Brandon will be reading The Lord of the Rings by Tolkien, which is my favorite book. So I do want to also explain that it is more reading vlog, a little less commentary, though you'll find there is some commentary. It is more having to do with Brothers Karamazov because Dostoevsky, this is the first Dostoevsky that I had been exposed to, so Brandon needed to fill in some of those gaps for me. But with Lord of the Rings, Brandon was already a huge fan of the franchise. He's read the books before, but it had been a long time. So you'll find that there is more discussion on Brothers Karamazov than Lord of the Rings, though they're both definitely in there. The next thing is that you'll notice this is filmed a little bit differently. The quality isn't going to be awesome. All of this was filmed in Marco Polo. None of this was originally intended to be here on YouTube. This was just between my brother and I. So things are going to get a little shaky, possibly make you a little bit dizzy. So sorry about that in advance. You don't have to look. And then the last thing I just want to say is spoilers, obviously, between Lord of the Rings, a little bit of Silmarillion, I'm pretty sure, Brothers Karamazov. I think those are the things, but you're here anyway, so I'm assuming you know them. Anyway, have fun. Hello. Update on day 1 of trying to read Brothers Karamazov again. I am not quite yet as far as I got the first time around, but I'm trying to annotate more and pay attention more, and it's all good and everything, though I did remember, I had forgotten from last time I tried reading this, that my copy is really stupid, and that I can't even see on some pages, not every page, but on some pages I can't even see the beginning of the lines and the end of others. Because the printing is not well lined up, so that's fun. But it's okay. I can basically make out what it's trying to say. And then so right now I just got to the part where all the Karamazovs plus a couple other guys are in front of Zosima, and Fyodor is being real stupid. And I don't think that you've read Emma, but just in case you have, he reminds me of, Miss Bates, but really, a disgusting Miss Bates. Just in the fact, he can't stop talking. And maybe this is just a Russian lit thing, and I'm gonna have to get used to that, like everybody, maybe, going on for long paragraphs and pages, just talking crap. But maybe it's just him. Anyway, those are all the updates that I have so far. Yeah.
Well, glad to hear it's coming along. I thought I lent you my copy. I guess I must not have. That or my copy is not well structured. I don't quite remember. But if I didn't, I'll gladly lend you my copy if it's better formatted than the one you have. I don't know. I haven't looked at it in a while. But yes, as far as going on and talking, that is pretty typical of a lot of characters in the book. There is a whole lot of pages of dialogue, but I do, if I recall correctly, I think it is particularly true of Fyodor. So, yeah, just be prepared for a bit more of that.
Hello. Human interaction? What is that? Hi. 3 things, I think? Maybe more. First thing, I have not been entirely faithful to Dostoevsky this week. I did read the entirety of Fall of Numenor, which you may have already seen on Goodreads, so maybe that's not news, but out of that comes number 1, which is Fall of Numenor.
was pretty fun. There was they like marketed as this is not new Tolkien writings that like have not previously been published. All of this has been published somewhere, but they're just compiling everything that has to do with Numenor. But there was stuff in it that I had not read before, and so that was fun. Not only to have like everything in one place, but then realize, oh, there was stuff I didn't know. So one notable thing included in that was that the idea of Numenor didn't exactly come out of his whole like deal with C.S. Lewis, but it really started getting developed after he and C.S. Lewis kind of decided that Lewis was going to do space travel and Tolkien was going to do a time travel book. And of course we know about C.S. Lewis, but Tolkien's was going to be called The Lost Road, and it was going to be time travel, and at some point in the book they were going to go to basically Atlantis and see it fall. And so he started writing narratives for all these things, and there was an excerpt from that book that was unfinished and obviously turned into Numenor. But there was like Sauron in it and everything, like as the antagonist. And what was super interesting, first of all, Isildur was not named Isildur, he was Helendil. Elendil was still Elendil, but instead of Isildur we had Helendil, which I thought was funny. But Helendil was not on board with Elendil wanting to escape at first. Like Isildur, the idea of Isildur was going to be like caught up in all of the things, and he was going to be torn between his father and loyalty to the Numenorian king or whatever. So that was really interesting. And there was other new stuff too, but that was probably the most like, whoa, I didn't know that, really any of that. Anyway, so that was Fall of Numenor. It also reminded me of how good the Rings of Power tracks are for Numenor. Like, obviously the normal Numenor one, like it's called Numenor, is very good. And then there's Sailing into the Dawn. I'm trying not to cough because I don't know if I'm like spreading germs into their house. What was this thing? Sailing into the Dawn. If you haven't really listened to that one, it happens at the end, I think, of episode 5 when they're like getting ready to leave. And it's so good. Anyway, so that was number 1, was Fall of Numenor. Well, this is gonna be long. not as long, because number 2 is just updating on Brothers Karamasov. I didn't entirely neglect it, even though I did blast through Fall of Numenor. I have read a couple more times. I got through, the first day that I started it, I got through the entirety of what I had gotten through last time I tried. And so everything now is new stuff in the past couple days. So I am at the part where Dmitri just told Alyosha about everything that happened with Katerina, and he mentioned that he would kill their dad if their dad got in the way of him and Grushenka or whatever. So that's fun. Things are already picking up, I think. I'm liking it more. Dmitri did talk for several pages, but he did eventually get around to a story, but there was like a few pages there where he was definitely like just drunk and rambling on about really crazy random stuff and citing poetry, and I was like, I don't know how long this is gonna last, but I guess this is something that's gonna happen frequently. But yeah, so trying to get through that. I'll probably read more of that tonight. And then number 3, because I'm reading Dostoevsky, I'm pretty sure in our original deal that means that you need to pick up Lord of the Rings again soon. So just let me know if you want to borrow one of my copies, because I've got the single volume and I've got the 3-volume version that are older, and they smell better in my opinion because they're printed like in the 70s, but the single volume's easier to travel with, and it's, you know, nicer and newer. So if you want to borrow.
Well, per our arrangement, I have started reading through The Lord of the Rings. I just sat down and got through all the introductory historical content about the hobbits and their societal arrangement, and I feel like I don't know how any of that is going to be relevant, but yeah, we're starting on into it.
You already have a copy? I didn't know that you already had a copy, unless you're reading it online, which is maybe acceptable.
I am reading them online, although I will probably at some point get some physical copies, depending upon the degree to which I take to them. If I really, really like them, I'll get some nice copies, we'll see. But I just wanted to get the Kindle versions in the name of expediency, so we'll start there. I will say you're reading with a lot more dedication than I ever did. I've never annotated that book. I'm sure it'd be a party, but curious to know what you get out of it.
I don't feel like I'm annotating. I just am trying to pay attention to it, and so I have colors for the main three brothers. I probably should make one for Smirdyakov at this point, but I'm too lazy to. And then one for their dad, and one for just general quotes that I like, and then I'm like underlining things or whatever. But it's not really like super in-depth annotation. I'm just trying to pay attention to the characters and what I know about them, and like things that might be foreshadowing where we're going. But besides that, I'm just trying to make sure that if I'm gonna be doing this alone, like reading through, like I'm not in like a class setting or anything, that I'm catching things hopefully that I should, but we'll see. Also, I'm about 2 chapters away from the Grand Inquisitor speech, and I know that's important, and I forgot why, but I think it has to do with the faith. But yeah, so I'm almost there.
Yeah, the Grand Inquisitor is a big thing. Everyone goes insane about it, and that's with reason. Dostoevsky does this thing in a couple of places in the book, and other places as well, where he pushes really, really hard against the Christian faith so that he can respond to it in as meaningful a way as possible, and it makes for some really interesting dialogue. So yeah, have fun with the Grand Inquisitor. So by way of a brief update, they're currently, they've had the council meeting and the fellowship is about to leave. One thing I still, for whatever reason, just am not used to, like as I read it always weirds me out, and I don't know why, is the use of normal months. Like you have Octobers and Decembers, and for some reason that still just feels wrong to me. I don't know why.
Well, everything is translated, so they probably called it by different names. And also, it is the history of this Earth, so still the same movements of the planet and the sun and all the things. So there would still be the same amount of months and length of months.
Without a doubt, the greatest hero of the entire story, unsung hero of the whole trilogy, is Bill the Pony. Absolute legend. So it's kind of weird. I had seen this passage before, and the usage of wings here seems almost like it could be ambiguous, and so I could understand why people were unsure. But on the next page you have this one, right? So, and its wings were spread from wall to wall. That one seems a lot more like explicit about it's got wings. So, I mean, why are we even having this conversation?
I forget about the second example that you gave exactly, because I've looked this up before, and I forget exactly what the text evidence was for that one, but I'm pretty sure in other places he uses the word wings to maybe describe arms, like your wingspan. I don't know. That's my guess. But I remember like looking through this video before that went through like every single quote where the Balrog's mentioned and there's like verbiage like that in question. And they were able to like pull it back to other places, especially like in the Silmarillion, like he'll use the word like he flew from like this place to this other place, and it's somebody who can't fly. And so whenever it says like the Balrog flew, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's flying. Anyway, I don't know. Okay, and also to update on where I'm at in Brothers Karamasov, I've had to slow down a little bit in the past couple of days because the weekends tend to be a lot busier for me, but the last chapter that I read, wow, my throat hurts so bad. The last chapter that I read, Smerdyakov was being super suspicious, and kind of so was Ivan. Like, he feels like this, like, hatred towards Smerdyakov, but somehow he's able to, like, keep his composure, but he's, like, not even sure how he's able to do that. And Smerdyakov's, like, gonna totally let their dad get murdered. And I got through the it was like in the chapter past the Grand Inquisitor, so I've gotten through that and was surprised by how unchallenging it was. Like, I thought it was gonna be a maybe not like an attack, but like against the faith, but it was more just against like the church and the abuses of the church and how it like co-ops power and from the world and like denies Jesus in the way that we're supposed to be. So I was surprised by how unchallenged I was by that speech, but yeah, we'll see. And even like Alyosha says that straight out. He's like, you're not mad at Jesus, you're mad at the church. And I was like, yeah, that's what I was thinking. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's very possible. I've seen people who found that passage really... Sorry, there's something on my camera. I don't know what it is, but it's really messing stuff up. I've seen some people who are really impressed by the thing itself. I think the thing I found more... that gave me more to think about was the dialogue about the suffering children and not necessarily the Grand Inquisitor itself, because he presses big into the problem of evil there. But I think the overall thread of it that is interesting, and that I see it more in his work than I see in other places, is this idea of like you have these goods that are earned by allowing evil, and all this theodicy sort of stuff that you see in Christian literature, but this idea that even then it wouldn't be worth it, that suffering and evil is so bad that it wouldn't be worth it. And I think he does a good job of communicating that idea, and that was something interesting to think about. But the Grand Inquisitor itself did nothing to keep me up at night when I read it. I know some people who were more impacted by it than I would have been, but yeah, it's an interesting one to think about.
Yes, exactly. About the whole suffering of small children thing, that was a lot more impacting than the Grand Inquisitor to me, because I was like underlining a lot of the lines there, like, dang, this is woof. Like, what is the Grand Inquisitor gonna be if this is so bad? And then I underlined almost nothing in the Grand Inquisitor. And what was I thinking? Oh, I just read a short story that was really... It was close to a line from Brothers Karamasov, and it's called the Ones Who Walk Away from Omeles or something like that. It's Ursula Le Guin, and it's like a really short story, and it's about the idea of... It doesn't even like kind of conclude itself, it just presents this idea of a society that is a perfect utopian society, but it only is the way it is because of the suffering of one small child in a basement somewhere. As long as that child is in intense suffering, everybody else gets to be happy. And the ones who walk away from Omeles are the ones who learn about that and actually decide to leave because they can't support it, but everybody else just kind of ignores it. It's also very much like that episode of Doctor Who with the star whale. I think they stole that idea. I mean, of course they stole that idea, but anyway. Yeah, so agree about the whole children thing.
Yeah, I've read that short story, and I found that really interesting, and that one gave me some stuff to think about. But yeah, definitely a powerful passage. I will say, I do find the Grand Inquisitor interesting, and I really like the way that it ends. But I felt like, originally when I read that, I felt like that was more confirming my own opinion than anything else. Like, the Grand Inquisitor seems to be... It ultimately acts... It's phrased like it's an argument against, against Christ, but in actuality, it sort of functions as an argument for him. And I do think that's kind of Dostoevsky's point, is more to parody, like, the sort of... Like the attitudes that gets confronted with, but it's very clear that they're worldly attitudes and that they fall short of something greater. That I think Ivan and Alyosha both ultimately understand, which is cool. That's a lot of what I really like about Ivan's character, and you get to see that more as you read, is that he is presented as an atheist character, but there's clearly that instinct for, like, there's something more here that needs to be pursued. And that makes him really interesting to read when he talks about faith, because he's not like the new atheist type that's going to be very dismissive. It's almost more like a seeker, like someone who's being led down that sort of path of real, like, where Christianity touches the heart. And I like him because Dostoevsky gets to use him to explore a lot of where Christianity touches the heart and that sort of thing, but also kind of like the pressure of nihilism and the sort of implications of it in a person's life and that sort of thing. Really interesting stuff. So, yeah, hope you're enjoying it.
Okay, I am at From the Life of the Deceased Monk and Priest, the Elder Zosima, as taken down from his own words by Alexei Fyodorovich Karamazov. What a title. And then 45 pages are about to come of the writings. It's so funny because Dostoevsky was like, I have decided to omit some of the details in certain conversations to make it shorter and less tiresome, and it's still going to be 45 pages. So this is just totally... Hello, you're here. This is totally off topic, but I just remembered that I had this thought before and didn't share it with you, that it's so funny to me, like the spectrum of... I need to put the bookmark in this book so I can use my hands just because I have to. The spectrum of authors and the way that they use their names, because on one end of the spectrum we have Jane Austen, who in Pride and Prejudice named the character who's named Jane is the sweetest, kindest, best character ever, and then on the other side we have Dostoevsky, who the character who's named after him is just the most despicable, horrible man. And it's so funny to me. Also, the crack over my camera, doesn't it just make life so fun?
It certainly gives the impression of an ethereal wonderland. Yeah, that is kind of funny. But the life of Zosima is a good read. It is long, but it's a good time.
Other thing that comes into my mind. These lights, man. Okay. It looks like I'm crying light. Ivan's worrying me a lot. He is pretty erratic, and his behavior and his mental state is just kind of all over the place, and I'm worried about him. He just got on the train. That looks like I'm snotting light. He got on the train. He was supposed to go to Churchmanchia or something. I forget what it's called. But instead he was nah, at the last second, and he went to Moscow instead. But this poor guy, I don't know what's happening to him, and I'm a little worried about him. Oh, and then friggin' Smerdyakov faked his stupid epileptic fit and fell down the stairs. What a little rat.
Yeah, Ivan has an interesting time over the course of the book. Without giving too much away, I'm just gonna say, you ain't seen nothing yet. He continues to have a time of it. But yes, we all hate Smerdyakov.
I just wanted to make the announcement that ChatGPT does explain like I'm 2. Because I was putting in some explain like I'm 5s, and I was like, wait a second, what if I did a younger age? And it's actually simplifying it even more. And it's I put in eucatastrophe, and the first sentence, or the first couple sentences, eucatastrophe is a big word that means a really happy ending. Like in a story when the main character's in trouble and they find a way to fix it and everyone is safe and happy. Which is more simplified than the explain like I'm 5. So this could be a lot of fun. It also talked about a boo-boo or something. It is pretty good. Oh my gosh. I did explain like I'm 2 eternal damnation. It's word that means being very, 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 very sad forever. Like when you cry and you can't stop, it's like being in a timeout forever and ever and ever. It's important to be nice to others and listen to Greta so you don't get in trouble and be sent to eternal damnation. Alright, I got the first chance to read in a few days. Talking to Brandon, not you, sorry. Marco Polo. She says hi. I got the first chance in a while to read today. I am officially over halfway through. Right? I think several men are dead. At least 2. And Dimitri's gonna go find your girl Grushenka. Things are getting serious, so I don't know, not too much to report yet, but the things are happening, have happened. I have to say I'm very confused. I am reading after Mitya's murdered however many people, he drives to McCroy and is like playing card games with the random guys that Grushenka was hanging out with, and I'm so confused. I'm so confused at what's happening. Why is this necessary? I don't know. I know that I'll figure it out. I'm just like sitting here, this whole chapter, there's so many new characters, and they're doing nothing that's related to the plot except for Dimitri's like just spending all the money left and right. Besides that, I'm so confused.
Yeah, without giving anything away, I'll just say that you're at a very important part of the story, and it continues to matter for the rest of the book. So just hang in there. There's a reason all of this matters. It matters, which is a rare thing, is that it actually does matter for the plot and not just for the characters. So just get through it, and trust me, it will matter.
It's already starting to make a little more sense, because it's connecting back to the plot, like things like blew up between all the people, and Grushenka and Mitya seemed like okay, but then like all of a sudden he had this moment of remembrance in the middle of the party, and he like feels bad, and obviously it's like all happening in the same night, so I know that it'll probably have to do with like his alibi and whatever. It's started to come back to the story a little bit, but every time that like there were several pages where I was like, I'm not keeping up with the plot. I don't want to be lost because I'm afraid that it's going to mean I'm lost for the rest of the book, but then it started coming back, so. Alright, here we go. Preliminary investigation, because some little Dmitri has been charged with murdering his father. Gregory's freaking alive! Oh my god. Okay, so they found Dmitri and they're questioning him, and he says he didn't do it. And so right now, I just want to put my theories out there. Well, what I want to happen in my current theories.
Don't eat her.
She's not gonna eat a hat.
Don't eat her.
I want it to have been Smerdyakov, and that he was faking the epileptic seizures the whole time, because that would be really dramatic and fun. But I have a feeling that it's still Dmitri, and that he just like went in some kind of like crazy fugue state and did it, and honestly like doesn't believe that he does it. That would also be interesting. I think, I don't know. I want it to be Smerdyakov, but I have a feeling that it's Dmitri. This is what was happening on the other side of the camera. Doggy.
Go get her.
She's too busy.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and let you linger in your uncertainty. I did want to say one thing that makes a lot more sense after reading the book version of it so far is the scene between Gandalf and Theoden, where he comes there for the first time into Edoras. And because in the movie, this never really quite clicked for me. In the movie, he just calls him Gandalf Stormcrow with no context. And in the book, it's like there's a whole reason behind it based on the conversation where he's making the comparison. And it makes a lot more sense out of that line in the movie. Because for a second, whenever I watch that, I'm like, is he just senile? Like, did he just forget Gandalf's name? Or is this something I don't know?
Okay, so I was thinking about it, and I realized they put in a line that, like, is related-ish to it, but you're right, they don't really like explain its connection to the Stormcrow thing. But like Grimo's like, Loth spell, I name thee, ill news is an ill guest. That's kind of the closest they get. Besides that, yeah, it's kind of like out of nowhere, and you're like. Also, something from this book that I thought was really funny, that when the people find Dimitri and they're like, father killer, and he's like, I didn't do it. Immediately, Grushenka, she's like, it's my fault. He did it because of me. It's because of me that he killed him. And I'm just thinking, like, Grushenka, shut up. That's funny.
And so I know that they changed the character of Aragorn from book to movie to make him a little bit more like, I don't know, I guess reluctant to take, but like, I did not realize how much they changed him, because at genuinely every single opportunity, he won't shut up about Elendil. It's constant, like all the time. It's always Elendil.
Indeed. He's the king. He owns it. He loves his heritage.
He loves it. He's like, oh, what, this? You mean the sword that was broken? Oh yeah, no, it's been forged again.
I don't know what I should have like thought about all of the thoughts that I was thinking before I press start, because they don't all matter. But did you know that one of his "I love you" like going into battle shows up in Fellowship when after Boromir tries to take the ring, and then Aragorn like sends like Frodo off, and then the orcs come, he like jumps down, he's like, I love you. So that's fun. Yeah. Hooray for snow days. That helped me to read a little bit more than I would have otherwise. Me and Bella are having a reading party.
I can't read
We've got Schubert's, I think, huge face on the TV. It kills me that they do that. Anyway, I am through a bunch of it. I just got through the interlude with all the little boys, and with Ilyusha and Kolya and all that. And the very next chapter, we're going back to Grushenka's, so we're getting back to the main story. But wow, that was a little emotional and depressing. And
my person's going on trial, and I physically can't read anymore because it's a book club book.
Oh, you're not allowed to read any further.
Oh.
Sucks. I bet I could finish this within a week if I really try. Also, I'm super grateful that Alyosha is back. All of Dimitri's book, I was just missing Alyosha. So I'm glad that he's back in the main narrative. He's so sweet. And just his relationship with Kolya just kills me.
Well, currently I am passing through the marshes. I don't think I've made as much progress as you held side by side, but yeah, we're getting through Two Towers. I feel like I was very into, because they stick, I suppose the movie couldn't have done this, but they stick entirely on the Helm's Deep and Isengard stuff for that whole third book, and then we catch back up to Frodo and Sam, and I was like, oh yeah, them. And I was like almost a little bit depressed because I was so into what was happening already. But yeah, we're passing through the marshes. So I guess a little over halfway through Two Towers. And we've tamed a Smeagol, which is fun. I will say, all the stuff about Saruman I found a lot more interesting in the book than the movies, because they had a lot more going on, where I feel like he was a little bit more interesting in the books, and then instead of just having him fall off and hit a spike or whatever, that they got some interesting interactions, and that was fun. Also, I don't know if you can tell from my voice, but I am still feeling pretty sick. So yeah, good snow days. I think progress is definitely going to slow down, because I'm going to have to go back to work and I'm going to get tired again, but yeah, we'll see.
Marco Polo is so rough, because I have to remember so many things that I was thinking. Okay, first of all, I don't know if I knew that you were sick.
Schmeagol.
Guessing it's not COVID, but she just keeps saying Smeagol. Yeah, agree with all the things. I'm really excited though, because you're really close to Faramir, and like after What? Yeah, you know who that is now. After everything was at the Orthonk, it really slows down when you get back to Frodo and Sam and Gollum for a few chapters. But once you pass the Black Gate, the rest of the book is my favorite. It's just so freaking awesome. So excited for that. I think that's all I could remember for this moment. Okay, this made me laugh so much. He finally mentions the name of the town, Cattletown, right? And it says, I've tried to avoid mentioning it all this time. I don't know why, but that is so hilarious to me. Side note, I hate Alyosha and Lisa. Obviously he needs to be with Katerina, but I have a feeling it's not gonna happen.
I am not going to say anything so as not to spoil anything for you, because I don't know exactly where you are. I don't think you're there yet, so I will say nothing.
Nothing has necessarily happened yet. Technically right now he and Lisa are engaged, I think. But how many times in the past hour or two, probably just the past hour, that I have said aloud to myself, please, God, please, let Alyosha be with Katerina.
I will just let you keep reading and not spoil anything, because I will say I've never really thought that, but and I guess you'll see why I never thought that as the book progresses. But for now, I will just let you keep reading, and I will not spoil it.
Other point of thought is that keep seeing the top of this page and being reminded that this is Yvonne's book again, but we haven't seen him in several hundred pages, so... Okay, let me reenact for you what just happened. Thank God! I took a break for lunch, right before Alyosha started talking to Lisa, and one of the first things she said is that she broke up their engagement. I was like, oh, thank God! I can't believe I was only a few lines away from seeing that. Okay, that's all. We love a cracked camera. My poor little brain, she forgot that Smerdyakov hanged himself, and so I read that line when Alyosha goes to Yvonne's house and Yvonne's having some trouble with Satan and stuff, and he says that Smerdyakov killed himself. I gasped so loud, and then 2 seconds later I was like, wait, I knew that.
It's an absolutely legendary scene, and I'm so glad that it's in the books and not just in the movie. I'm so glad to find it. And then here, for your sake, is what you've been waiting for. So, we are there now. So, we've now finished our time with Faramir, and I gotta say, he is definitely a very respectable dude. At pretty much every opportunity. Very wise guy. I found it interesting how often, because I know that the do not value the sword for its sharpness, that whole line comes from his dialogue. But there's also multiple points throughout all his conversations with Frodo where he talks about how, society has changed and they kind of value war for its own good and that sort of thing. And you kind of get this sharp contrast between him and Boromir, where they're definitely making a whole point of it. That he's you get the sort of men as they've become, where they're kind of war-lusty and that sort of thing. And then Faramir is a really nice, clear picture of man as he was supposed to be. So he doesn't kill any of the animals unnecessarily and that sort of thing, and he tries to be just and gentle and stuff. So he's definitely a man as he was supposed to be kind of picture. Cool dude. Wish he'd hang around, but he does a lot of talking too, a lot of talking. So got a good amount of Faramir.
Good morning. Fun fact: Faramir is Tolkien's self-insert character. So all that you were saying about Faramir being the man and the soldier that men are supposed to be, or the ideal man or whatever, that's just Tolkien. What a guy. Also, I almost finished Brothers Karamasov last night. If I had kept going, I would have been able to finish the entire book, but it was 9:30 and I was I've been reading all day. I think I have about 60 or 70 pages left. So if I have just like an hour or two over the weekend, I should be able to finish it. Okay, one thing about Brothers Karamazov, I am not currently reading it. I am supposed to be watching my lectures on dispensationalist eschatology. It's a great time. Anyway, but I was thinking about this over the past like few weeks, that my printing of Brothers Karamazov is just so bad. A couple of pages a little bit unreadable just because the words get cut off over on the right. Like I showed you at the beginning of the book, it stopped in the middle, and now it's happening again where all the words are just so towards the middle of the page that I have to like pull the book apart to see all the words on the lines. It's a little frustrating. And even the pages are like a little off kilter too. Like all the words are just ever so slightly off. So I think I'm gonna be probably investing in a different copy. I'm trying to figure out which one I want to get. So far I'm leaning towards the Penguin Classics just because I like the way that one looks, but I don't know how much you know about like good translators, and if I should be looking for a specific copy that has like a particularly good translation, because I know that people have opinions about that. When I posted about reading it on the Tea with Tolkien Discord, there were like people responding saying, oh yeah, you need like this specific translation. But anyway, I finished the book and I'm a little upset because it's not 100% clear. I guess as far as we know, it was Smerdyakov and Dmitri got sentenced for it. Is that what I'm supposed to take away from it, or is it supposed to be a mystery? Sigh. Also, the fact that they ended with Alyosha with all the little boys and it like has so little to do with the rest of the story. I just feel like plot-wise, maybe like thematically, there's more that I need to think about what that end part is trying to say, but it's like, what? Also sad that like everybody's basically alone and Alyosha's losing his whole family. Because Ivan's like on the verge of death now and Dimitri's about to be sent away unless he escapes. Either way, poor Alyosha. And then Katerina was kind of in love with just Ivan and Dimitri the whole time. So disappointing. Whatever.
Yeah, it is kind of an interesting ending in that there's not a whole lot of felt closure, at least from a plot perspective. But, I mean, the way I kind of read it is just that the big central thing is the three brothers. And for two of them, their arcs have already kind of come to the important place. Like, Dimitri's big arc has a lot to do with his own sort of personal redemption. And that was kind of already happening while he was detained. And Ivan's big arc had mostly to do with his deterioration, and that kind of comes to fruition at the trial. And so by the time you reach the epilogue, really the big important thing for me is how Alyosha is going to finish. And he finishes by ultimately finding his place in the world, which I think is a nice thing, because so much of his arc for like the second half of the book is coming out into the world and learning to be there and what that means for him. And so by the time he reaches the end with the boys and he's sort of this great, awesome, like authority, like teacher figure among them, and he kind of finds a place of peace. And that's the sort of positive note that we're kind of hoping for him, that he gets, he finds that role that works for him. So mostly I see that as wrapping up Alyosha in kind of a positive way, but it is a weirdly unclosed ending. And I think there's something kind of fitting about that as well. So yeah, there's the book. You know how you can be playing a song for ages just based off of what you did by ear and you thought it sounded fine, and then you made one change ages later and you realized that it was way better? This whole time I've been doing, which is fine, but then I've been doing, and I realized yesterday that I could be doing, which is 1,000 times better. Alright, mister, I don't like allegory. I see you sending Aragorn into the city very briefly to heal the sick and then leaving again so that everyone else can wait for the king to come back again.
The Houses of Healing, that's such a good chapter. This is maybe not going to make sense because I'm not going to give you all of the explanation, partially because I'm lazy and partially because I'm currently watching lectures. But I'm watching lectures on the covenants, and we're starting with the Adamic order. Adamic order? And I learned that the Garden of Eden is basically Valinor. That, like, people believe, like, the Garden of Eden was, like, picked up and moved to, like, the heavenly realms. So, is Valinor...
I mean, Valinor certainly had Edenic vibes, so I guess it makes sense that Eden should have Valinorian vibes. Doesn't actually make sense, but that's interesting. I didn't know people thought that.
See, I thought that Brothers Karamasov was going to take me several months, but it only took me like 30 days, so who knows. Also, as it currently stands, I am going to involve Brothers Karamasov in my teaching a Tuesday night next Tuesday, though today Michelle basically told me I need to cut a whole bunch and make it simpler. I'm talking way too much like a seminary student and not relatable, so... I don't know, I might keep it in because I'm just like very basically talking about Grand Inquisitor, whatever, but I just thought you'd be interested in knowing.
That is fun. Glad you're finding some utility in that. I saw the 4-star review on Goodreads. I suppose I could live with that. It doesn't have to be everyone's top 3. I was gonna get to a review of Lord of the Rings on Goodreads, and I was contemplating giving it a 1-star review, just like give you a moment of panic or something. I'll probably review that soon. But good that you're getting some utility out of it. I hope that it fits into the time and the scale and scope of that conversation.
There are multiple reasons I didn't give it a 5 stars, but mostly it just has to do with like the length and the way that it wrapped up, because I was like, that's all. Like, it very much just felt like I should have had a little bit more closure and or found out more of the truth by the end, and like ending it with Alyosha and all the boys, like, and we talked about like Alyosha's arc, and that's great for him and everything, but it just like feels weird. Hello, there's a train near me. Oh, there are train tracks. I'm next to American Airlines Stadium or whatever. What was I talking? Oh yeah, just like the way it ended was weird, and then it felt like the book meandered a whole, like everything takes so much to say, and I know that's just like the nature of that kind of novel, but it was like, did we need to have all of it? I feel like Dostoevsky just loves to write, and good for him. It was just a little much. But besides that, I thought it was great. I liked the themes that it covered. Probably just the ending was what I was most confused by. And like, I would have written it different probably, but maybe that's just my modern mind, my 21st century mind that wants more closure, more things to like tie together, because there are so many things earlier that just feel like I wish would have been revisited. For example, like Dmitri a little bit more and Ivan a little bit more, because like he had like a breakdown, like a full-on breakdown the last time we hear from him. and none of that really comes to its closure, and Alyosha just seems to be fine that, like, his dad's dead, his brother's gonna go off to a work camp in Siberia, his other brother is wasting away from his insanity. He just, like, oh, and his other secret half-brother hanged himself. Like, this poor guy. But he seems to be fine.
Yeah, I mean, to your credit, I definitely do think that the ending to that book, out of the novels from him that I've read, I think that is one of his weaker endings. Which is weird because it's one of the last books that he ever read, and you'd kind of think that, like, that would be sort of the pinnacle of a sort of evolution in terms of shaping narrative. But I think that ending does fizzle out a little bit more. I really like the ending to The Idiot. I think that ends really strong. I think the ending to Crime and Punishment, honestly, is even pretty solid. Even though that book as a whole is not one of my favorites of his. And in general, I find it kind of boring, but it does have a stronger ending. I suppose there is probably some degree of that is just Dostoevsky being Dostoevsky, in part because he just starts a dialogue and he likes to go and go and go. And then also because there's this element of, I don't know how much you know about his life, but there's a whole point of it where he's like a political extremist, and then he ends up getting arrested by the government and sentenced to execution, and then he kind of like just gets pardoned at the very last moment before he's about to get executed, and that clearly left a lot of like baggage for him in terms of all of this stuff just happens and then life just goes on and not really being sure what to do with it. I feel like there's probably some amount of the ending that's very real to him, just in terms of like, you have all this momentous change and then you're just kind of left with it, and there's this sort of existential uncertainty of where do I go from here that they are kind of left with. But there is definitely a yearning for something stronger. I think in my own perception of the book, my own personal understanding of the stories don't exactly end at the end. Like, my imagination of Mitya's story ends in the I think there's a prison cell scene where he's talking, and that's where my story ends for him. And for Ivan, my story for him ends at the trial when he loses it. And my story for Alyosha probably ends in his like last conversation with what's her name? Why is her name escaping me? The little girl who crushes her finger in the door. I don't know why I'm blanking, but it's like, I feel like at certain points I feel like I get closure for their arcs, and then the book keeps going, and so by the time I get to the end, it's like, I guess I'm happy with it. But the end itself is not very strong. So I think that is a fair point. But it's kind of like a symphony to me, in just that the reason I like the book so much is because of the sort of individual pieces that make it up, because so many of those pieces stick. So the conversation, the big sort of grand inquisitory conversation between Alyosha and Ivan is like just a moment that sticks. And a lot of the conversations between Mitya and Alyosha just really stick for me. And Ivan's whole situation with the Satan stuff, that it's like it all just kind of sticks. So when I think about the book, I think about those and I don't think about the end, which is why I still really like it, despite the fact that the end is a pretty weak ending. So yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I think if you want a strong ending, and I know you've got plenty to read and plenty to work on, and I don't want to keep foisting Dostoevsky on you forever and ever, but I suggested the Brothers Karamasov at first because I think it's a more accessible read. The Idiot's weirder, but it is my favorite. So if you ever want one with a stronger ending and a little bit more focus, I do highly recommend that one as well. If you ever have the time for it, those two are the top of my list for him. Is Brothers Karamasov kind of in second place and The Idiot in first place. So I think it's got a better ending if that's ever something that you have the time for. If not, either way, glad you enjoyed the book.
Yeah, I plan to read more Dostoevsky because I really did like the Brothers Karamasov, so eventually I will. It's probably not going to be soon, but eventually I will. It'll probably be The Idiot. If I remember right, just from what I've heard, I think Crime and Punishment might be too depressing for me, at least right now. But yeah, so Idiot will probably be next, but it'll be a second. Gotta read Paradise Lost first.
Yeah, have fun with Paradise Lost. That's a whole project in and of itself. Yeah, Crime and Punishment can be more depressing. I didn't care for it just because I don't mind depressing books if they're good. But that one is interesting if you're just looking for like a psychological crime novel. I think it's good to read, but I even think some of his like short stories are more interesting than it. So, but yeah, have fun with Paradise Lost.
Okay, for one, that message was incredibly difficult to hear because the wind is so loud. And then it got louder towards the end, and it made me feel like maybe you also had a finger on the microphone or something. But anyway, he said something about his short stories at the end, and I just remembered that I bought White Nights by Dostoevsky, which is one of his short stories, if you hadn't read it or heard it yet. And it hasn't arrived yet, because if I remember correctly, that's the one, it's coming from the UK, because it was cheaper on Blackwell's. So I will be reading one of his short stories. Haha!
Yeah, sorry, I got in here and rewatched that, realized how loud that was. I was just saying that, in case it didn't come through, I was just saying that Crime and Punishment feels more crimey and psychologically, and not very, like, theological or Christian or spiritual, so I didn't care as much about it. Still probably an interesting read. I have read White Nights. That's an interesting story. That one actually made me think a lot about myself, in a way I wasn't ready to. This is a pretty interesting story. I hope you enjoy it.
I had almost forgotten that she was coming until we talked about it yesterday, and look, she's here, all the way from the UK. Hello. I'm still like half asleep. Don't you love that I'm sending this? It occurred to me that you never gave me final thoughts after finishing Lord of the Rings, which I'm assuming you finished after this point. So maybe today, maybe Saturday. Let me know.
Also, you had asked about my thoughts on Lord of the Rings. I just posted my review on Goodreads. You are welcome to read it.